Does the Wolfpack have the depth to win a fourth straight ACC title and finish top 6 again at the NCAA tournament? Let's stop stalling and start talking wrestling. What's going on, wrestling fans? My name is Josiah, and welcome to Fanco Wrestling, your source for college wrestling news and discussion. And I'm breaking down the NC State lineup this week because they have so much craziness going on with them. I mean, honestly, although a lot of guys are returning, most guys are returning to the lineup, but there's a lot of readjustments that need to be made. And so I wanted to break down and compare last year's lineup to this year's lineup to let you know exactly where guys are going to land and where team points honestly just need to be made up in order for them to compete again at a great level. Now, NC State, listen, they're in a stacked conference with Pitt, with Virginia Tech, with UNC. I mean, these are tough teams that always battle it out with NC State. And NC State has seemed to be on top, at least in the team tournament. But they've struggled a bit in other areas, looking at Virginia Tech duel last year. And I don't want to say struggled because it was a battle that came down to the wire, but Virginia Tech did get the better of them in the dual meet. And I'll be honest, I think they have a better shot at winning an ACC title, a fourth ACC title, than winning an outright dual meet title against Virginia Tech, who brings a stacked lineup. We'll get into that in another video. But I'm excited to see where NC State does end up. So let's compare these lineups. Let's head on over to the whiteboard to compare last year's to this year. So let's look at NC State's lineup because there's a lot of craziness going on here. So I wanted to give you this comparison because there are a lot of guys returning, but there are many guys bumping up. We're not sure where some guys are going to start in the lineup, but I wanted to give you this direct comparison. So you see the All-Americans here, Tariq Wilson, Hayden Hiley, as well as Trent Hiley, all coming back for another season. But the one guy who's missing from this list is Daniel Bullard. Daniel Bullard, who was wrestling 174 last year, is not returning this season. He's one of the only seniors not returning to NC State next year. So what's happening with everybody else? Well, first of all, at 149, that's when we're going to see Tariq Wilson wrestle 149 next year. So Tariq is bumping up, and I'll tell you one thing is I for sure can't wait to see how he's going to do against the rest of the competition in the weight class. So who's going to go at 141, and what's going to happen with Ed Scott at 149? Well, the easiest thing here is Ed Scott, who unfortunately was NC State's only non-qualifier last year, will be bumping up to wrestle 157. So who's at 141? That's where we're going to see an incomer in Kai Oring. He's actually going to be wrestling. He's a 3-time preps champion. He had a decent season last year, wrestling a couple of extra matches, and that's where we're going to see that. So we really see this kind of happening there with them kind of being just bumped up a weight with Tariq moving up. And then at 174 and 197, those are the other two interesting things. So it's great that we're seeing Thomas Bullard come back, who I think could get onto the stand this year. I mean, he's just been so close in the past, and I'm actually going to break down the scoring and how NC State could actually potentially outscore themselves in just a minute, but I do want to talk about these two weights. So at 174, that's when you're going to see Hayden Hiley make the big jump to 174 pounds. I mean, I've talked about this in the past, but what's happened here before is Michael Kemmer, he's made a jump from 157 to 174, and he had major success this year. So could we see the same thing happen for Hayden this year? I'm thinking it could very well happen for him. And 197, so Nick Reenan is returning. So he is one of the guys who could be starting there next year. But the other guy I do have to mention, and I think may get the start just based on Nick Reenan's performance at the NCAA tournament, where he didn't quite perform the way coaches or even himself wanted to. But we're going to see, I think the best bet here is going to be Isaac Trumbull. He already beat last year's NCAA finals in Nino Bonacourse. He beat him in the regular season. He beat him fair and square. I think there's a good chance he could get the start here in the lineup. It's going to be a wrestle-off for sure. So let's break down the scoring and what needs to happen for NC State to outscore themselves next year. So the question now becomes, who needs to step it up? Which NC State wrestlers need to step it up in order for NC State to potentially outscore themselves at the NCAA tournament? And can they even outscore themselves? I'll give you the breakdown. I know I gave you the lineup breakdown, but what needs to be made up? So first of all, guys who missed the blood round or even just got close to being an All-American, these are the first guys that really need to get back to the place where they were before. I have a chart that I'm going to show you, pull up in a second, breaking this down. But guys like Jacob Camacho, Jarrett Trumbley, who made the round of 16, he's got to find a way to make the blood round at least. And Isaac Trumbull, who, again, I don't know if it's going to be Renan or Trumbull, but he's a guy who can at least maybe make the round of 16. Like I said, he beat NCAA finals last year, Nino Bonacorsi, outright. He's got to find a way to get up there. I mean, it would be his first tournament, and there's a lot of pressure at your first NCAA tournament, but Trumbull's the guy who could get it done if he is actually the guy who wrestles for NC State next year. Thomas Bullard finally needs to get into a placing round. You got to get some more national qualifiers, getting a couple more wins. Deontay Wilson at heavyweight has got to find a way to pull out a couple more wins than he has in the past. In the All-Americans, they need to find a way to repeat that. I'll give you the scoring breakdown in a second, but, Tariq Wilson, top 3 finisher, you got to get back there. And I think he can. I actually do believe that a lot of these guys can get back to where they were. Hayden Hidley, he's a national finalist, and maybe bumping up to 174, he can do something different, pull something crazy off, get back to the national finals, as well as Trent Hidley, who maybe he makes the finals again, and I think he can. He has other tough competition there at 184, but he's a guy there. I think NC State has an opportunity to crown an NCAA champion next year. I really do. I don't know who it's going to be, Wilson or one of the Hidley brothers or somebody else we're not necessarily seeing, but I think that if they get a guy into the finals, they're really going to have a strong chance of outscoring themselves. They scored 68 points at the 2021 NCAA tournament, and they could score around the same if all of this comes to fruition, if all of this comes to light where they were, because like I said, they are losing one of the Bullard brothers who was an All-American. That's big points lost on the board. But if they do get a guy in the finals, or if they do get a champ, they could have potentially mid-70 points, which is big. They're now competing not only against themselves, but with teams like Arizona State, like Michigan. This is somebody, maybe they don't get to the Oklahoma State level around 100 points, but this is somebody who can actually compete if they get back to this level. Now, listen, if you're interested in Arizona State, I mentioned Arizona State. If you're interested in the Arizona State lineup breakdown, you want to check out this video right here. I go into depth of where everybody is and why I think their team can be very tough in the upcoming season.